The way teachers manage students has progressed from the previous authoritarian regime of top-down control to now embracing democracy within the school environment. As a civic teacher, do you perceive any distinct differences in your
Are you
experience?
referring to evident disparities in instructional approaches? Personally, I perceive minimal dissimilarities. From my standpoint, students have remained relatively unchanged over the past couple of decades. They are still students. What has evolved is the pedagogical climate. Previously, there was a stronger emphasis on teacher authority. Nevertheless, even within that context, I would opt to assimilate with students, comprehend their perspectives, rather than employ oppressive teacher authority to stifle their voices. Are you asking if I feel restricted in managing students now? Personally, I don't think it's a big problem. I believe it would be better to explain it this way. In the past, regulations regarding class rules, school policies, and students' rights were not as clear as they are now. In recent years, regulations have become increasingly explicit, including Constitutional Interpretation Number 384, Number 684, and subsequent Number 784. These constitutional interpretations primarily emphasize students' rights and protect their rights. Personally, I believe that it is not inappropriate to emphasize rights excessively, but it is important to maintain a balance between rights and responsibilities. The more rights are emphasized, the more we should prioritize the importance of fulfilling obligations. I think, being a teacher in this generation, we need to pay special attention to the relevant legal provisions concerning our own rights. Nowadays, students have a heightened awareness of their rights, and in cases of friction or conflicts in class management and student discipline, having backed by law can be beneficial. So, while the limitation of teacher authority by student rights is one aspect, looking at it from a different perspective, it actually serves to clearly define the boundaries between teachers and students. In this context, teachers and students should prioritize their own rights and fulfill their respective responsibilities.
I remember you refer to your experience in a reform school. I previously asked a friend who serves as a representative for children and youth, and he informed me that he has handled cases occurring in typical public and private schools, but none of reform schools. Reform schools are educational institutions, so logically, students of reform schools should receive legal protection. When there are incidents of students' rights being violated in reform schools.
As most students in reform schools come from disadvantaged families, obtaining their own rights is comparatively more challenging for them than for children from typical households. They have limited access to resources. That's why I enjoy volunteering as a legal advocate in reform schools, because the students there truly need assistance. As a civic teacher, my primary focus is teaching law. Therefore, as a volunteer, my main tasks involve reviewing court judgments and assisting in defense statements. Some students in reform schools may hire inadequate lawyers, so I help them by referring them to more specialized lawyers in juvenile justice through the Bar Association. Engaging in these activities gives me a sense of fulfillment.
So in reform schools, many students' rights are restricted. But what should students do if teachers violate the law in the school?
Let's start with the part about students. A long time ago, before the reform schools reformed to ordinary schools, the teachers of these schools were divided into two groups. Half of the staff members belonged to the Ministry of Justice, and the other half belonged to the Ministry of Education. Teachers from the Ministry of Education were chiefly responsible for education, while those from the Ministry of Justice were responsible for management. There was a significant difference in how teachers from these two ministries handled the discipline of inmates. Therefore, when we mention inappropriate corporal punishment or physical abuse within the schools, it was often carried out by teachers from the Ministry of Justice. Following the reform, emphasis was given to the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Justice provided support. I think that after the reform, there were significant improvements, such as improper corporal punishment. However, I cannot guarantee that such events will never happen, but they have certainly been greatly reduced. As for the part about teachers, I think that with the successive generations, teachers are increasingly aware of the law, the power, and the responsibilities. More teachers are conscious of what they can and must not do. Taking the recent Hulk of Taoyuan incident as an example.
Event summary. On that day, a man surnamed Zhu lost control of his emotions and caused a disturbance in a convenience store, damaging merchandise. When the police arrived, Zhu became agitated and attacked the officers. He was subdued and handcuffed by the police, but he remained emotionally charged and verbally provocative. In a moment of losing control, the police officer drew a baton and struck Zhu.
It is permissible for the police to restrain and handcuff Hulk, but continuing to exert physical force on him after he was subdued violates the principle of proportionality. Therefore, besides understanding the law, it is also important to have emotional control.
What's the most impressive case you deal with?
I have handled many cases, and the most memorable one was teacher giving a disciplinary record of a student without following the principle of proportionality, because such incidents violating the principle of proportionality are quite common.
I would like to know whether teachers have ever told you that as times change, it has become more and more difficult to educate students.
Yes, some teachers have told me about the concern that as times change, it has become increasingly difficult to educate students. However, personally, I believe that after the introduction of Constitutional Interpretation number 684 and number 784, students will not become more difficult to educate, just only their rights and interests have increased. In Constitutional Interpretation number 784, it is stated that the court will respect the expertise of teachers during the adjudication of cases. By investigating the facts of the incident and considering relevant testimonies, along with the principles of proportionality and basic principles, the court will determine whether the severe disciplinary action imposed on the student is appropriate. To sum up, judicial authorities will respect teachers' administrative disciplinary powers.
When students' rights are violated, they can request the help of the child and youth representative. Similarly, when teachers have concerns about the management of student rights issues, are they able to consult with the representative on relevant issues?
In terms of whether teachers are able to consult with the child and youth representative, I would like to mention the following. In our case in New Taipei City, for instance, we have 40 representatives in 4 groups, and I'm part of the student rights group. The representatives do not only provide services exclusively for children or youth, so it is possible for teachers to contact us with relevant questions, because we have our own expertise. To address issues related to children and youth, we conduct research on relevant legislation and gather public input on the subject. Therefore, it is acceptable for teachers to seek our advice on matters regarding students' rights. Full protection of the rights of pupils is not possible in the short term. To achieve this goal, it takes not only the participation of representatives of children and youth, but also the collective efforts of students and teachers. In the future, student rights will become a highly prioritized issue. With the emergence of organizations such as the Taiwan Youth Democratic Association in favor of students' rights, progress is being made. However, there are still some open secrets that need to be addressed and resolved.